Well, Stephen, thanks again for coming on the program, sir. Good talking to you once more.
Thanks for having me, Cam.
And tonight, we've got these laws that are being introduced around the country, these lost or stolen provisions that require gun owners who are the victim of burglaries to report their guns lost or stolen, or else they become they become a criminal themselves. But what happens when you do report your gun stolen and it is recovered and you can't get it back? That's what we're talking about tonight, right?
Yeah, the problem is what we're going to talk about tonight is the Missouri case called Jerry Troyer versus Missouri State Highway Patrol. And in short, it's a case, where after years of being jerked around by the Missouri State Highway Patrol, a law-abiding NRA member finally had his lawfully owned pistol returned to him. But, that only occurred after he brought a lawsuit with the help of the NRA Civil Rights Defense Fund. And, what you mentioned there a moment ago, it's an unfortunate fact. It's an unfortunate fact, that when you deal with legal issues relating to firearms ownership, many state agencies, particular, police departments, in particular jurisdictions, they take any action they can to take lawfully owned firearms away from the rightful owners. And then when they do that, they refuse, the demands by the, law-abiding rightful owner to have the firearms returned. And, I got to emphasize, Cam, what we're talking about here are cases where the firearm owner is a law-abiding citizen, okay? Not a criminal. He didn't do anything. He's not alleged to have done anything, and where the firearm is a lawfully owned firearm.
Right.
What we're talking about are cases like, for instance, where somebody's gun is stolen, or reported stolen, and the police later recovered, or, cases where a firearm was legally used in self-defense, let's say to scare off a rapist, and situations like that, there's no accusations whatsoever that the gun owner did something wrong. And, what's happened, Cam, is that in certain jurisdictions, firearms are being treated as a, seize first and ask questions later, piece of property. And it's strange. I mean, this is a constitutionally protected conduct, owning a firearm, and yet they do the opposite. Instead of protecting and honoring that constitutional right, they go out of their way to really step on it.
Right.
A lot of times, just a moment ago, I said seize first and ask questions later. At the very first sign of a firearm being around, no matter whether it was used in a crime or not, no matter whether it's lawfully owned or not, no matter whether its owner poses a danger or not, many police agencies, their instructions are to immediately confiscate the firearm.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a good example, and that's, what happened in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, when Mayor Nagin and his police chief, without any legal authority whatsoever, unlawfully, illegally, they seized the firearms of law-abiding homeowners and citizens, and then leaving these same citizens, defenseless in a chaotic situation, where there was no law and order in the face of vicious criminals who were freely roaming the streets, looting, raping, robbing, murdering. It's just outrageous, And what you have in these situations is when a law-abiding firearms owner then demands his lawfully owned firearms back, when, some of these agencies, some of these jurisdictions simply refuse to return the firearm, or they stonewall the owner, just try to wear him down. Some police agencies take months, sometimes even years, to return the lawfully owned firearms. Even though there's no reason not to return the firearm. And some agencies, they don't return it unless you sue them. You got to bring a lawsuit. Most people don't have the money, the time, the effort, the gumption to take on the local police department, the local state authority.
Yeah.
Local authority, and some state and local law enforcement agencies are all too often abuse their power when it comes to confiscating and refusing to return lawfully owned firearms. But luckily, Cam, the NRA and the NRA Civil Rights Defense Fund, we're trying to make a difference. We're trying to make this a less common occurrence by creating tough legal precedents against this unlawful practice. And that's why we took on Mayor Nagin, we took him to task in New Orleans, while the NRA Civil Rights Defense Fund is providing financial legal assistance in over a dozen wrongful seizure and delayed holding cases across the country at any given time. At any given time, the Civil Rights Defense Fund is supporting those cases across the country. And the case, we're going to talk about today is the case of Jerry Troyer in Missouri. It's one of these cases. And, I always begin this with a statement, just like in all the other cases, the guy was reported as a law-abiding citizen, and Jerry Troyer had nothing more than a traffic ticket on his record, okay?
Mm-hmm.
NRA member for years, and he owned a Webley Mark VI revolver, had owned it since 1968. Okay, that's quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Of course, the Webley Mark VI 4.455 caliber top break revolver, standard British issue sidearm for World War I and World War II, and was used by various police agencies on both sides of the Atlantic. And Mr. Troyer's Webley was actually produced in 1917, and like I said, he'd owned it since 1968. What happens is on March 7, 2004, Mr. Troyer noticed that his revolver, his Webley, was missing from his home. And, he immediately begins to looking for it. He's going crazy, looking all over the house for it. And then when he hadn't found it by the next day, by March 8th, after a day of searching for it everywhere, he reports it stolen to the local police, okay? And Mr. Troyer describes the Webley. He also gives them the serial number, which he has, the date of manufacture, the place of manufacture, and a picture of it, from his photo album, and a description of the green pistol case that he kept it in. Now, a week later, the Webley revolver was found by a neighbor of Mr. Troyer on the county road near where Mr. Troyer lived. He'd taken a walk and, I guess, fell out of the gun case. Now, the neighbor didn't know that it was Mr. Troyer's gun, and so he turns it into Missouri State Highway Patrol, Troop Headquarters in Rolla, Missouri, okay? Now, soon enough, Mr. Troyer finds out about this from the neighbor, that his revolver has been found, and he contacts the Missouri State Highway Patrol and asks them to return his revolver to him. But the Missouri State Highway Patrol informs him that because the gun had been reported stolen instead of lost, the revolver would now have to first be sent to Jefferson City, the state capital, for testing at the state crime lab. Now, remember, Cam, the gun was not used in any crime. Mr. Troyer was not a criminal. He was not a disqualified individual. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Troyer was a lawful owner of the firearm. He proved it to him. He's the one who reported it stolen and gave the description, the serial number, and all of that stuff.
Right.
Okay, but Mr. Troyer, he's a good guy. He doesn't think any harm here. Okay, just have to wait a few more days. No big deal. But days turn into weeks, and as the weeks, go on and on, Mr. Troyer realized that they're playing a stalling game with him. So, more than a month after he had reported the gun lost, he had enough, and he informed the state police that the revolver had obviously not been stolen, had simply been lost by Mr. Troyer on the county road, from his home near his house, and asked again for the state police to return his revolver. And he sent a letter delivered it. He actually delivered it to the Missouri State Highway Patrol Troop Headquarters for Rolla, Missouri. Delivered it himself. Mm-hmm. By the way, later on, Cab, during the litigation, the Missouri State Highway Patrol evidence officer denied that they had the letter in their possession.
Oh, really?
I mean, they often lose this kind of stuff. But then on April 16th, when he still hadn't heard from them, he then goes to the Missouri State Highway Patrol headquarters in Jefferson City, okay? And there they confirmed that they had possession of the revolver, and they promised to return to him in about 2 weeks, okay?
Okay.
Well, 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, 4 weeks go by, okay? When Mr. Troyer had not received the revolver by May 10th, he goes to Missouri State Highway Patrol Troop Headquarters for Rolla, Missouri, where they told him that they did not have possession of the revolver and that they would, in any event, not return the revolver to him, even if they had it, unless he first obtained a Missouri permit to acquire a concealable firearm. Okay? Now, on May 14, 2004, he returned to the Missouri State Highway Patrol Troop Headquarters for Rolla, where the evidence officer confirmed that they still did not have possession of the revolver. And the evidence officer told him that he was not sure when the revolver would ever come back from Jefferson City. Okay, now we're into June. Okay, in June, Mr. Troyer gets a telephone call from the Missouri State Highway Patrol Headquarters for Rolla, informing him that they had gotten the revolver back from Jefferson City, and that Mr. Troyer could pick up the firearm with a PTA and a purchase permit. And on June 26, 2004, Mr. Troyer sent a certified letter to the captain of the Missouri State Highway Patrol Troop Headquarters for Rolla, stating in detail that the law did not require Mr. Troyer to obtain a PTA to get his own gun back, which he already owns, okay? And this just keeps on going. That for several more months, basically from March until August 2004, After many telephone calls to Missouri State Highway Patrol, many visits to both the headquarters in Jefferson City and the local headquarters in Rolla, after certified letters to the Missouri State Highway Patrol, and after various unsuccessful attempts to retrieve the firearm from the agency, the Missouri State Highway Patrol finally agreed to return the pistol, but only if Mr. Troyer showed them the original pistol acquisition permit.
Oh,
okay.
Come on.
I mean, they didn't have a right to have
that he had
PTA
since
in the first place.
You said he bought this in the 1960s.
1968.
Jeez.
Now, and as you figured out, the problem that Mr. Troyer has now, is he doesn't have a copy of the original acquisition permit. Again, he bought the gun more than 37 years ago. Okay, and the other problem was, just like before when they said you need to get a PTA before we'll give it back to you, the problem was that was not required by law, and also this wasn't required by law. There was no requirement to provide the original pistol acquisition permit in order to get his own gun back. Okay, so we're back to square one. Okay, basically the Missouri State Highway Patrol says, well, if you can't get the original one, now we're demanding again that you get a new PTA. Okay. And, a Missouri permit to acquire concealable firearm, the permit is required to purchase a handgun, okay? And Mr. Troyer kept on pointing out to them, I'm not purchasing a handgun, okay? I don't wish to purchase a handgun.
Right.
A permit to purchase a handgun is not required for possessing a handgun, okay? I just want my gun back.
Yeah.
And the Missouri State Highway Patrol took the position that for them to transfer the firearm to Mr. Troyer would have to get the Missouri permit to acquire a concealable firearm. Now, Mr. Troyer pointed out that he already owned the gun. He was not purchasing the gun. He's been owning it for 37 years, and therefore he said a permit to acquire was not required since the gun was clearly his. Nobody was disputing that. And he also felt that he had more than proven that he was the owner of the pistol. Remember, Mr. Troyer had reported stolen to the police before the neighbor even found the gun. And Mr. Troyer had reported to police when he did. He had given them the serial number, the photo picture of the firearm. I mean, the picture of him with him and the gun, an accurate description of the case. It was in and more. Between 1917 and 1924, 6 states, mainly in the South, passed laws requiring the residents to get a permit at the state level to purchase a gun. These laws were sponsored by the KKK, okay, to stop blacks and others, such as Hispanics, Italians, Jews, Catholics, etc., from getting firearms, and so that's the history of that legislation.
Okay.
Now, and they were then the firearms permits were granted in a very discriminatory manner. Now, back to Mr. Troyer. Since the Missouri State Highway Patrol refused to return his lawfully owned firearm, Mr. Troyer was forced on August 4th, 2005, to file a replevin action with the Circuit Court of Phelps County seeking the return of the revolver. That replevin is a lawsuit where you try to get your personal property back when somebody has wrongfully taken possession of it.
In this case, the wrongful possession was on the part of the Missouri State Police.
Exactly. And to cut the story short, when you take a look at the statute is absolutely clear. It's his gun. There's case law, including the Court of Appeals decision Taylor v. McNeil, that says it's his gun, and the Missouri State Highway Patrol fought it until finally got into litigation. Once it got into litigation, after various court hearings, when they realized the writing was on the wall and imminently they were going to get defeated in the court, they finally agreed to return the revolver to Mr. Troyer without requiring that he obtain a pistol acquisition permit. And then finally on October 12, 2006, over 2.5 years after he first tried to get the revolver back from the Highway Patrol, 2.5 years later, it's finally returned to him.
That is unreal. And you said at any given time, the Civil Rights Defense Fund has about a dozen cases that they're working that are, again, like the wrongful acquisition. Is that what you call it?
the seizure of a firearm and then or refusal to return lawfully owned firearms. There's about, at any given time, about a dozen of those cases that we're supporting all over the country. So we're trying to teach these agencies, these jurisdictions, listen, you can't just get away with those, with just improperly seizing firearms and keeping them away from citizens. I mean, and the purpose of that is just to deprive people of a constitutional right that in some jurisdictions is not liked.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Stephan, again, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again next Wednesday.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you, sir.